and this is our September edition of APIs and IPAs. We rebranded that this year to kind of broaden the scope of topics. We were focusing largely on security and APIs, and now, as everyone in this room I'm sure knows, it's AI all the things. So we AI'd our meetup as well. With that said, I want to welcome everybody for coming. And I want to first and foremost say thank you to Leslie Peterson. She's the reason why these things have any success whatsoever. Engage in general for hosting this and providing the food and the drinks like they do always. And Phil Blackman for doing a ton of stuff to make all this work too. So super appreciate you guys. And Leslie, I know you like to do a little introduction of Engage partners, so can you please come up and do that?
First of all, can everybody hear okay in the back? Because we have a microphone and I'm not afraid to use it. Yeah, okay. All right. Well, first of all, welcome. We're so excited you're here. It's nice to have the normal crowd back as we get into fall. Just wanted to tell you quickly who Engage Partner is and why we're doing this. We are a purpose-driven technology consulting company. So we like to give back into the community. We have a triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. This is our people part of what we do. We like to use this space to bring the community together, and we're excited to do this for a topic that seems to be very hot these days. So anyway, welcome. That's a little bit about us. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Do you want to do that thing?
Oh yeah, so we always like to promote other meetups that are going on. So if anybody has anyone that they would like to talk about, one we always promote is that's held here is the C3 meetup. It's code, craft, and community where we bring developers together to work on a real life project together just to learn new things and to network. That's the third Wednesday of every month here at 6 p.m. All are welcome. So C3. We also have Ministry of Testing. That's an online meetup that several of my company counterparts run. So that, I'm not sure the regular cadence for that, but that's usually monthly. Any other events anybody would like to talk about? Yes.
First Wednesday of the month is iOS meetup, an atomic robot up in Mason.
Great. Okay. Everybody hear that? iOS meetup at Atomic Robot in Mason?
That sounds good.
Yep.
I live in this.
Too far.
Anything else?
Awesome. All right. The other thing, speaking of networking, if anyone's here that's looking for a job or, busy, and we've got one over here too. So this is a great place to meet up and connect with folks. So if you're looking for help, if you're hiring, we got a couple in here.
Well, you can, why don't we just have, it's the first time we've done this. So if you just want to stand up and say your name, that would be great, what you're interested in.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I don't like saying my first name and last name together because it sounds like a sentence. Izzy Bikins. I don't know. Okay. I am currently looking for a job. If you'd like a reference, you can talk to Heckler or Bobbert or Naresh or Mike or a couple other people in this room. I like writing IPAs. Or APIs. I don't like IPAs. I'm allergic to beer actually, so I don't even know why I said that. But I'm happy to be here, and if y'all are hiring, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Do you want to?
Hi, my name is Alexander. Just came back from being in Germany for 6 months and not working, just exploring, having fun, and come back to a fun job market, to say the least. And so I'm looking for work. I'm a software dev, probably 90% back end for web dev, 10% front end sometimes.
It changes next week anyways, it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So I've mostly worked with a lot of dynamic languages in terms of my work history, so Python, Ruby, JavaScript. I've also done some weird esoteric stuff like Haskell and Lisp and things like that, which if I could get a job doing that, that would be amazing, but pretty rare that anyone has work in that space. So
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Functional languages.
looking for work. If you have any leads or references or whatever, I'd be happy to talk to you. So
Awesome. Good deal. All right, well, let's not waste any more time. Let's.
One more.
Oh,
One more.
my bad.
Sorry, just one more, then I'll let you get on. I'm Elijah, student at Cincinnati State University. currently on a bit of a leave right now because personal reasons. So I'm not currently working in the software field. I'm currently working at UC Health with process technician. So anybody in the room with any ideas, any entry level jobs I can get into, get in the field, you know, like help desk or like an internship, paid hopefully. Helping to break into the field. I know a little bit of Visual Basic and a little bit of Python, and I'm very willing to learn more. So any help is appreciated at all. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Awesome. Thanks. Good deal. Anybody else? Awesome. All right. Well, then let's introduce our panel. David, why don't you go first?
Sure. I do know that I have a soft voice. If you cannot hear me in the back, please let me know. In fact, actually, let me stand up real quick. I'm David Brocious. I work at Great American Insurance downtown. Specifically, we have a Great American Software Lab inside of our IT area. And we blend extreme programming techniques, lean product, user-centered design, and cloud-native design to make our customers happy. And I do a lot of different things in the lab. We kind of wear hats, a lot of different hats inside Great American. By title, I'm an architect. By trade, I'm a programmer. Love programming ever since the first Hello World dialogue box that I made too long ago. But anyway, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. Scott?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I work at a company called Integral Analytics. My title is president, but that's like a sentence that I was given 5-6 years ago. People management. But it's been fun. My background is in computer science. Went to UC and studied GIS with the computer science degree. So I
Wait, can I ask what GIS?
geographic information.
Oh, okay.
So it's CAD on Earth.
Yeah.
So really big arcs.
Like ArcGIS?
Yeah, ArcGIS. And so that was a long time ago. I hope I look young. But it's always been big data problems. So the thumb drives were like amazing for us GIS folks because it's like video editing. The files are just massive. So I've struggled with large files for a long time, which has given me a little bit of an advantage as the data got bigger. But currently, with a team of about 40 or so, we're part of a larger parent organization, but we create software, enterprise, business-to-business software for electric utilities, highly regulated, very bureaucratic space, but really awesome users that are the power systems engineers that plan the distribution voltage, which is kind of what runs down the streets. And so we help them come up with 5, 10, 15-year plans. And so we have some software tools that it's boil the ocean software. So we try to predict things that can happen at a neighborhood level, which is almost impossible. So we have a lot of simulation, a lot of time series analysis, a lot of long-running graph models. It's this big old pool of data in models. So the new world of AI is helping us boil the ocean, so that's good. We better be lucky than good, and AI is coming in with all this data to help us compile the data and have shortcuts.
Awesome. And then we did have lined up Josh Falter from GE Aerospace, and he is sick. And therefore, huge thanks to Robert Buchanan, who is also one of the folks that helps organize and put up the meetups here. So he's going to step in, and he's working at. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Robert Buchanan. I am currently employed by P&G. Just a caveat: all the thoughts and opinions tonight are my own. They're not of P&G. I do not represent them here. I am talking on behalf of myself. That's my legal coverage. Outside of that, I'm an API guy. I've been in the API space for over a decade. I've published a book on Kong, the Enterprise API Gateway. I'm currently working on a book with Pack Publishing, Beyond the Endpoint, where we talk about API architecture, some use cases that were real-world scenarios that I ran into or talked in depth with other people. But ultimately, I've been in the API space a lot, and knowing that AI leverages all the APIs that you've either crafted, built, or insecurely deployed, kind of scares me. So a little bit of the cynic on the AI side, but definitely here for using the tool as it should be.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna start us off, and again, if we wanna take the conversation, or you guys have questions that you really wanna ask them, it's fair game. We don't have to stick to the ones that we've written down here, so we can, but if you don't, I will continue to pepper them with questions, so don't worry. Let's start off with, I don't care who goes first, you guys can decide. Give us an example, a real world example today of what you're doing with AI, maybe generative AI, agentic, something that's fresh, current, and you know that you think is good and working, and what value is it from?
I'll gladly start off. From the API side, I work in, at this moment, my project is multiple languages, polyglot. I'm switching from C to Go to Kotlin and anywhere in between. So the way I'm leveraging it the best right now is the tool of, I write it all in Go, handcrafted, I understand the security model, understand what I'm doing, and then I have the AI help me craft the C version and the Kotlin version. I have enough knowledge in both of them to proofread the code, understand what it's doing, and really curate it to not have AI slop, but I don't have to do all the nuances and all the things I'll forget from switching language to language. So honestly, for me, the biggest value right now is a better search index in Google, because Google is now ad ridden and whatnot, but it's also a good converter from language to language because I've already solved the problem. I just need the syntax that I don't really feel like looking up.
Cool. So we'll get into some of the other technologies that go along with that, but basically the use case is programming, development.
Yep.
Yeah. Scott?
Curated programming and development.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are excited about and spend a lot of time every day, even like right before I got in the car, it was like closing the laptop with Claude Code and other, agentic coding patterns. And so I'm interested in talking about that, hearing from you all. There seems to be no great practice. It's the Wild West for agentic coding. It's really exciting, it's really powerful, it's done a lot of cool stuff. The two examples in terms of our applications, we have like this expert system where if we're forecasting what urban growth or electric vehicle adoption in a neighborhood, you can imagine there's a few planners that have to go through all the neighborhoods. They call them circuits, substation planning areas, but it's about the size of it's not as big of a zip code, right? Smaller than that. And they plan these areas, they have to go look through them. They're power systems engineers. They're not economists, urban planners. They don't live in that specific part of town. So we have all this data, and we have a forecast or a scenario for that area. And we've been able to use AI to help take all of the quantitative information and some of the qualitative information and create a good summary so that when they can read it and say, okay, there's a lot of public charging potential, whether it happens or not depends, but there's a lot of parking lots, a lot of retail, and helping them quickly review it so they can basically like swipe through all the neighborhoods and approve them and flag the ones that don't make sense. Because we have an expert system that's really tough and takes a lot of support work on our team, we sell a tool that requires a lot of expertise to turn all the knobs. And so just being able to provide clearer, consistent descriptions, that part is not as generative as the really fun stuff that we're working on, but it's a good example of low-hanging fruit that has made a lot of impact. Another good example is a side project for one of our sibling companies. We help them use image recognition AI, so the vision modality of GPT-4o to improve their subcontractor invoicing. And that was cool because scraping data off of a PDF or out of an Excel file is notoriously buggy and terrible, right, in both those formats. But if you took a screenshot of the PDF in code and then pass it in to GPT-4o and said, this is an image, just read it and return a JSON object, it did it. And then you can imagine all the others, the reporting was easy. So that was a great project, and we used it was overbuilt, like used MCP servers on the fly for this little app, little script, but it was cool. So you may hear me refer to that because we did test a bunch of dynamic MCP servers. So it was overly built.
Awesome. Dave?
I got to build on that. Anytime you have an example of a fixed whatever, whether it's a PDF file or whether it's an image, always think to yourself, if I need to act on whatever's in there, throw it into a model, right? And it will give you something that you can then act on, whether it's JSON or whether it's, I've done Markdown with different things. So have at that kind of thing. Like, I was trying to encourage people to think that way. Try and think of how you can solve whatever problem you're facing with AI. Right, now, as for an example, I think Matt might have worked on this, but we have a lot of things that we have to do over and over again, right? We have a lot of tech debt, we have a lot of 80 plus services in one area and that kind of thing. One of the things we're doing is we're transitioning our cloud environment, right? And so we're gonna have to retool how we do CI and CD, right? And so the group that did that came up with a prompt that helps anybody who has a Java project to make that migration from the old CI pipeline to the new. And it's just there. And I'm pretty sure, tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Matt and the person he was pairing with who said, I see that. It doesn't help me very much. Oh, it doesn't help me very much because we're in C#. So they went ahead and tuned it for C#. And I guess just to put a pin in it, one of the things we've done is we've created a Git repo where people can upload prompt files and instruction files so that we can at least begin to radiate those out to a broader population. We want to do something different, if anybody has any ideas, to get those things accessible inside an IDE, but baby steps.
Is that on?
I don't know.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You still couldn't hear me?
No, we couldn't.
Oh, you could hear
It was
me?
good, yeah.
All right.
You don't hear it up there.
Have any of you all heard
I hear you here, but not there. Like the speakers, I don't hear the speakers going off when you speak into it. So they hear you.
It's a good mix.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sure. Have any of you all? I was just told about this recently by one of our developers. Was awesome. What is it called? Like awesome dash blank pages.
Yes.
In GitHub.
Yep. They've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
they're incredible.
yeah, it's becoming a resource even for things like these markdown.md files and things. It's like the Git Wikipedia for sharing info. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so basically if you're looking for Go stuff or Java stuff, say awesome-go GitHub, and you will find repos of just curated list of videos, books, education, libraries. It's all separated by the community into database library, this library, that library, and it's fantastic resource. You literally can find it even for Awesome WM, which is a window manager. So it's just awesome-WM. But yeah, you can find lists and people put them together. Great.
What was that link again?
Just in Google search, just type awesome-whatever programming language or system you're working with.
Or concept.
Or concept.
Different concepts too. So like awesome, like development environment.
Yeah, and then put GitHub at the end of it. You'll find a GitHub repo where people are pouring in and just committing PRs of add this link, this link, this link. Fantastic deep dive resources.
Awesome.
Awesome.
See what I did there?
How many got on purpose?
Well, it will say the .md file.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is, I'm sure some of you all know it very well. It is the
Have you found Obsidian yet?
yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. Managing all of your own notes, right? And that these AI models, these LLMs like .md.
They do.
It's kind of
They
like
do.
your English teacher in high school saying the MLA format. But these AI models, the LLM, like these .md files.
We've actually seen a lot more success with JSON.
Yeah.
Putting the JSON bodies into it, crafting it to what you want it with the context in JSON,
Is that
you
right?
get far better results that we've seen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Interesting. That would be on a point-to-point prompt, right, or instruction?
Well, even with instructions like, hey, here's your context, here's your user scenario, here's this.
And
Like you just do key value of what is the
Okay,
context, and then the value is what you're putting in. And again, LLMs are fantastic for taking structured data
Right.
and analyzing it to come up with conclusions or come up with the generative part. They're not so great when you just dump a wall of text into it. It tries and hallucinates, but it tries.
Cool.
Can I add on to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
One of the things I'm interested in, and I'm curious if you guys have done this at all, is I know it's early days, right? Even for agentic, super early days. But I see a future where we have different prompts. We have prompts for security, prompts for that, prompts for this, and we have the same thing for instructions files, right? And I know that in VS Code, Microsoft is giving us the ability to have multiple files like that. I want to do something like that. Does that help? Thank
Much
you.
better.
So the cautionary tale with instruction files is less is more.
Give me more.
So we've seen a lot of people take instruction files and they're literally just follow this style guide, highlighting everything it should do and should not do, and basically it's trying to form it into their mindset. The problem is as it's reading through all that context, you're building up its memory file for what it needs to do that you leave very little room for it to actually create. So less is more in a way of be, straight to the point of what you want, be direct, don't be, empathetic or apologetic to it's a system, who cares, right? Unless you're trying to charge Sam and ChatGPT more money by saying please and thank you. But give the instruction files where it's more direct and to the point of what you want, and you'll get better results.
I'm very nice. I say please and thank you, and
I'm
I
glad
say
you
thank you
spent Sam's
again.
money.
And I'm like, when you come to kill people, don't kill them.
During electrical distribution, it helps that you say please and thank you, because you're just
Yeah.
making the industry bigger.
Wait a hand up.
Job security.
That's right.
People talk about how productive it can be to have AI build the prompt for you for future use. Where have you found that helpful or not helpful?
So funny enough, at least from my experience, you put a question mark at the end of a prompt instead of ChatGPT, it will give you a very short and sweet answer. You don't put a question mark on it and it gives you a dissertation. So when you start doing this of like, how can I write this better prompt? Don't even use proper English in some cases because it will give you more information in that sense. So using a question that you're trying to ask, like, how do I write a better prompt to answer this question? It does a pretty good job of giving you keywords for it to pick up on the next thing, but you can ask it the same question 3 times and you'll get 3 different answers. So it's all about the way I use the prompting is as a blank, I need you to have this tone, direct, technical, cut the bullshit, and then I need this type of result, meaning I need a comparison between X, Y, Z, I need a output of this type of, file or this format, and it does a better job by basically telling a junior developer, you need to do this way, please go. So.
The thing I'd add to that is you got to be willing to iterate. You're zero shot. You might get it in the first go, but assume that you're not going to, and assume that you're going to have to refine what you get back.
I would definitely use it to write prompts. I think that's, and also get good at writing prompts on your own, but they're not mutually exclusive. Like we're finding ourselves building a whole prototype in a few hours that looks like it's a incredible, massive enterprise app, just to then distill it back down to get to a prompt to hand off to someone that can use it in a more structured, slow, construction of an app.
So kind of sticking on this prompt subject, let me prompt you with some further prompt. So how do you see this evolving? Is knowing how to prompt LLMs the new programming skill set for all people to have, or will eventually the models be smart enough to figure out how to prompt you and remove that ambiguity or whatever it is, that specificity that it's looking for? Which way, in your opinions, do you think that's going to go? David, we'll start with you.
Microphone.
Right, thank you. Honestly, in my head, and again, I have to also say I am not speaking for Great American Insurance in any way, shape, or form. I'm just speaking for myself. But I don't know when the day is, but the day is one person is gonna speak into something. And that something will take it and do everything that we're doing manually now. It'll come up with requirements, it'll come up with a design based on a conversation it's gonna have with you, right? It'll generate a Figma file, it'll move that down the line so that it can then generate the code to satisfy the Figma file. I mean, that's where I see we're getting to. I don't know whether that's next year or 5 years from now, to be honest with you.
That's assuming we have enough power to maintain all the
It is true.
silicone and everything else to maintain the GPUs required to build those
You
models.
are a skeptic.
Because, I mean, realistically, if we look at the generations, GPT-1 and then we jump to GP2 is a massive percentage. Now we're getting 2% better, 3% better, and we don't have the power grid in the United States to handle it, for one. So then you look at other countries, China's building nuclear reactors out the wazoo to do it. They're gonna beat us in the arms race at that point because the society of the United States is fearful of certain power grid technologies. Realistically, even if we followed our EV plan, we would blow up our power grid just by electric vehicles. But to that point of all the GPUs and whatnot, I think to John's original question, one day maybe possibly if we get out of our own way, in a sense, and we forego and push to the next level of security. As of right now though, I constantly, as a cynic, see breach after breach after breach by people vibe coding, getting stuff out there, trying to make it be the end all be all silver bullet. And now we're just sacrificing people's livelihoods, we're sacrificing people's data, we're putting them into bad situations like the T breach, to where all the women that were on that support group app or that dating app, their information's public now, right? There's a lot of scenarios to where people are being told bad things, like the teenager who unfortunately took his own life because ChatGPT said he doesn't own his parents his survival, so he offed himself. This is not good in general because people are using it as a silver bullet. It's trying to be the end all be all. If we use it as a tool where we piece it together, put our knowledge on it, our passion behind it, our ability to siphon out the bullshit, we can actually use it for better good than what we're using it for today.
Well,
Scott, what do you think?
Better good is, again, being that tool to help us start solving real problems. Not just make an app to get people $10 out of their monthly allowance because we made a pretty little skin that they feel good with the dopamine hit. But
Okay.
solving power grid crises, solving food scenarios, scarcity, other things.
Scott?
Yeah, we should all learn how to prompt these things well, just like we should all learn how to speak to each other well. And the models are different, so learning how to interact with Claude is annoyingly optimistic and verbose and overwrites everything. If you played with it, you know. GPT-5 seems pretty nice to work with, but there's a lot of nuance there. Like I've told our HR group that I see us having like an AR group, like onboarding agents to do a task. You have to give it a lot of instructions. This is how we do this. This is what we don't do. We use this technology. We don't do this, and monitor it, because it'll do everything you say 9 times out of 10, and then that one time it'll just like, oh no, I just slipped in Node, like. So they're managing the agents is a reasonable skill. It's a good skill to have, definitely.
I have a question, because personally I feel like with AI there's a higher burden to understand the root problems that you're trying to solve initially, more so than there ever has been. Would you say, like, in your experience, is that the case? Like, do you feel like that's a similar experience you have? Like there's more burden on yourself to understand the landscape and what problems that you're trying to address?
Were you asking for all?
I'm asking the panel.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is a great question. What was the question? It was give me it again.
Basically, just like, I feel the burden of needing to understand more before I try solving problems with AI myself.
Okay.
So either using AI to help me understand like what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
So like, do you feel like that's your experience as well?
Mine's been mixed. Sometimes I have to do that. Like when I'm working on something that's greenfield and I'm trying to use Claude Code to gin up something from scratch, I got to think about it. I got to understand. But a couple of days ago, I got a file, the log file, and I needed to parse it. I didn't really need to think a whole lot about it. I just said to Copilot, hey, give me a Python algorithm that will allow me to separate this file into many files based on user ID. So I think it varies on the use case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say though that second use case, you knew what the problem was. You knew what the root of it. So it was
The
very
scale
easy.
of the problem
Right.
is very managed. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So,
Can I
question.
chime in? So I might be in the minority here. I'm officially a product manager, a technical product manager. So this question is really near and dear to my heart because we live in requirements. And to me, I definitely feel that it really pays off to get your requirements nice and succinct and correct so you can piece things out. And it saves you a ton of time and dramatically reduces the hallucinations because you've got stuff that you can bite through. And the quality of that, well, it depends how much you know your problem space already. Like you said, it depends. But I think the best thing you can do is to get really good at that if you don't have someone like me around that can do that for you. But I'm doing cartwheels because product people never have enough time, and so I can finally get better quality output with this requirements management in its abstract sense that helps a whole way. So
I mean, to piggyback on that is the best use cases of GPT Codex in my personal time that I've seen is when I gave it a actual design and I said, I'm using this technology, I needed to do this, basically the product requirements, and had it go off and start generating some code. It did more thinking than it did just spitting out. So the longer, it's funny enough, I try to see how long I can make it do the thinking part, just to see how much cycles I'm wasting of ChatGPT's money. But more so of, it honestly is analyzing at a deeper rate, right? So the more requirements, more constraints, the more creativity you'll get. That's with humans, that's with this LLM as well. Because if you tell it, hey, I can't use this version of Go, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's gonna come up with a solution. Now, if you know the problem set well enough and you know the language well enough, that solution may be closer to what you would expect a senior developer to do versus a junior grabbing the latest framework and throwing another dependency under your stack.
So let's go down that responsible AI, let's call it that, responsible use of AI is a concern, right? Like you're mentioning, I don't know how much I want to lean into this, when I'm not really sure what it's doing or what output it's gonna give me, or is it gonna create one of these scenarios where I know, and again, I don't speak for Kroger either, so this is a personal thing, but at Kroger they do have a group that is kind of responsible for setting some policies, some principles around responsible use of AI. And so if maybe you guys could talk to us about, like, do you have any guardrails in place, any checks and balances, anything to help, lead or guide people that are diving headfirst into this stuff?
I'll say it very briefly. Yes, we have a security group that is very conscious of the dangers that AI can pose, particularly with data leakage and loss, right? And so
And injections.
they've done a very good job convincing all of us not to go rogue, not to use a tool that hasn't been approved by the company. Now, the downside of that is it takes time and effort to get tools approved by the company, which can frustrate developers and product managers as well. But that's the way we're doing it. I forgot to mention, we're commercial insurance, heavily regulated. We have to be concerned about that kind of stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we have a Turing group that is all about AI and machine learning well before AI hype train came, just in general of, do we trust the models versus having a human review it? I think the best use case and scenario that anybody has said is, actually, I think it came from X, somebody mentioned, every line of code is an account or a form of breach or something else. So every line of code you write, you have to be accountable for. AI may have wrote it under your guidance, you're accountable for it. So when you think about accountability, I think if people understand that at the end of the day, I have to support this, potentially even legally liable in some cases for this code that I'm putting into it, or the code that I'm doing, they may go to better practices in general. I will say, anything that's within your company outside of like actual data sets, I need to solve XYZ. If you paraphrase it into a different way, you can use, tools to where you're not giving up company secrets, you're not divulging anything, but you still get to the same result or the same search query or, prompt that you're looking for. Because like you mentioned, you asked us earlier, is there anything that you have as a software developer not coded that someone else has already done in some form or fashion? It's like the 100 monkeys on a typewriter. Eventually they'll write Shakespeare, given enough time. So.
Scott, anything to add there?
Yeah, turn off, whether you believe them or not, definitely turn off the help them improve their model if you're in question of it. My guess is that the LLM models, because they are getting easier and faster to train and smaller, and they're going to want to put them in every possible device, like that microphone will have an LLM in it, is that they're going to get smaller and better, and they're going to be on our computers. So I think personally that we're living in this moment where these big cloud providers, they'll have great models, they'll be able to search the web, but like we'll have an amazing equivalent of GPT-5 Pro on our laptop pretty soon. And therefore the data security part is kind of like, yeah, be careful. Our parent company has better descriptions of policies, but we just have to be careful. Yeah.
Are you guys doing anything with open source models? Or are you all, are you purchasing models?
We're heavily statistical modeling group, so like we were using, but we're also in a regulated area where you can't have many black boxes, so saying neural network is kind of dangerous. But we have a lot of quants that work on our team that have equivalent of like neural network models. So we use a lot of small models that we develop or that we use. We have not yet used a public or an open source LLM, but chomping at the bit for when Meta or has one that I know they're already out there, and we're looking forward to taking one and training it and using it locally. But I think each month we'll probably get a better one before we jump in.
We've only used them for POCs. We've only used them for POCs with like Obama. If we're trying to prove something out, that's as far as we go.
Yeah.
We have company brands, so we pay for private models.
So let's parlay that into, and again, this would probably depend on whether you're doing this personally or for a small company or for a big corporation, but what kind of governance do you have in these things? So I know at Kroger, they have the concept of an API or an AI gateway, right? So you have to go through it to get to one of the models, and then they support the models. They only support the models behind it, so they know who's using it, when they're using it, which models they're using, and all that kind of stuff. And they can also build in some safeguards that don't let it, do something too costly or something like that on the front end.
Right.
What are other folks doing?
I can say it's early days, but that is a good pattern.
Yeah.
That you thought, because I think we're heading in similar direction. We're just not that far down the path of using APIs in our applications.
Just a clarifying call out here. When we talk AI gateways, a lot of it's marketing fluff. It's just a plugin. It's rate limiting for AI. You look at the source code of how they work. It's just looking at the metadata coming in to know what the objective is. Don't buy into the gateway hype of like, oh, you need this AI gateway for a premium of $70,000 a year. Just learn their plugin system and write it. It's not that hard.
So you agree with the pattern?
I agree with the pattern. Just don't buy into the hype right now of charging you extra money.
All of the gateway vendors are selling this now. It's like it's something new, and it's basically.
I mean, realistically, we did this with WAFs and everything else. AI came out like, oh, you don't need that. Just run it through this or some threat analytics thing. It's like we've done this type of work for 20 years. It's just changing how we go about it. I think the pattern has always been is protect your perimeter and then suspect your internals, right? I mean, insider threats have always been there. They're growing. I think the last couple of years, it's like 60% of breaches or malicious activity was internally based, either through maliciousness, ignorance, or accidental, right? So it's no longer like social engineering is still considered insider threat because an insider did something versus an outsider breaching like we've seen in all the hacking movies. There's very little brute force hacking that's going on, the zero-day exploit and take over your network. So guard the perimeter, but also just because they're inside the perimeter, don't trust that your employees or your vendors and whatnot are not doing bad things. You can get to a scenario where you trust but verify, but you really do have to still put in those safeguards, even with internal folks.
It might not be necessarily possible, but how do you account for any potential environmental impacts that using these guards will have?
Yeah, how do you counter environmental what?
Environmental impacts these large language models can have.
Environmental impact.
Yes.
I don't even know if they necessarily exist. That's the biggest counterpoint I hear towards AI all the time. But I haven't even really seen all that much evidence that there even is that much environmental impact besides using a lot of water. So I just want to know, does that actually exist? Is it significant? Like any more significant than the pollution that's already in the world? And
So
if it
David,
is,
repeat
how do
the
you account for that?
Question in the mic.
Yeah, so basically the question is, have we looked at, are we concerned about the environmental impact of using this tooling?
Right.
Given what we know, right?
And I would say it really depends on your provider of it. Some providers, I know Microsoft has put a lot of effort into making their data centers run on renewable energies. Doesn't stop the fact that all the silicone or all the metal that goes into the chips has to be mined out of the earth. The reality is, though, is if we really want to tackle that problem, it's not the GPU space to tackle it in, it's the $5 trinket toys that we give to Happy Meals that we throw away and all that e-waste. I mean, realistically, if you look at all the minerals and metal and electricity gone to build little trinkets that we sell and throw away and dispose on a regular basis, it trumps all the big companies buying data centers full of graphics cards, right? And most of those giant data centers running, in that operation space, they're running their own power plants or they're running cleaner energy. They're trying to do a lot more because they're scrutinized for it. They're heavily scrutinized for that stuff. But we're not going after the people building the small trinkets that is still wasting the same minerals and materials.
We spend a lot of time in this space. It's hard to put a dollar number on it or a benefit cost calculation on it. It definitely feels like it's like writing code. Like the beginning of the solution is super, super messy, but over time it'll get better and better and better. Microsoft just trained a large frontier level model in 1 week with 60 GPUs. It's because the training data set is getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. You don't have to throw all those dirty Google search tokens at it, and they're getting cleaner and cleaner. They're prompting it better, training it. I think that there is a promise now. It's probably like 80-20, good, bad, where 20 is a high number in my opinion for potential bad, and we're throwing so much at it. But if we were going to solve more efficient solar panels, better batteries, the storage on the grid, if we're going to solve this, AI, the data center usage seems like an upfront cost, an inefficient amount, right, that we should get, but the payoff of the intelligence will help us come up with new material sciences, come up with ways to clean water and all. You can see it now. Like Bitcoin mining kind of drives me crazy, right? Unless it helps solve something with blockchain, but the actual Bitcoin part, that seems a lot more. It's not as obvious. Personal opinion on the benefits,
but using AI to look past the last 30 years of research papers to come up with a new algorithm, new technique for mining, new this or that or whatever, doctor, analyze these 10,000 cases and notice that, hey, they all have this one thing that nobody really looked at, but it kind of correlates to something. That has a lot of benefits. Generating your latest, SaaS app for a single person to throw out there and then get breached, we're wasting energy and environmental, status there. But the pieces where it could really help us, it's worth the cost, I would say in some ways.
I do kind of agree with you, Scott. I do think that it's wasteful. And it's like, I can remember every technology wave that came on, web servers, you know, they were a dime a dozen. There was hundreds of vendors that had them out, you know, and then it eventually consolidated down to some pretty clean, you know, ones that pretty much everybody uses and stuff like that. I can see technology in general follows kind of that pattern. And, you know, I've gotten away with saying this a couple times, maybe I'll get burned on it this time, but I feel like using AI for a lot of what we're doing to program makes a lot of sense to me, because I seriously don't think I've ever known a single programmer my entire career of 30-some years of doing it that wrote an original piece of code that wasn't written sometime before then anyway by someone else, right? Like, we just keep writing the same code over and over again. To me, that seems like an ideal place to have a big, large language model know about all these things and just give you the answer for it, you know, kind of thing. Do you want to go first and I'll go over here?
Yeah, I had a question, just because you brought up governance earlier. I wanted to ask how you guys are thinking about upskilling stakeholders in your organizations around AI usage. You know, what are the limits? What are the use cases? You know, how are you thinking about engaging stakeholders in that way?
Go ahead. It's a good question. I'll be honest and somewhat parochial. My charge, my remit is developer experience. And so that's what I'm focused on, developers, right? I know there's applicability to product managers and designers. To your earlier point, I think there's going to be a bigger payoff in the coding space. So if we start there and solidify how we want to operate, how we want to proceed, then we expand out to the other roles, is what I would say.
I mean, the viewpoint that I take with anyone with AI is I first scare them a little bit with all the breaches, all the security issues, all the vulnerabilities, all the exploits that happen with it, and then I teach them that it's a tool. So I'll spend the time and tell them it's a tool, it's not your silver bullet, take your time with it. But here's what can go bad if you abuse it. It's like someone mentioned actually I had lunch with JFK today, a good friend of mine who was my manager at one point, but he said, AI is kind of like using power tools. You'll have a carpenter for 20 years using power tools. The moment the handsaw back kicks and almost takes off his finger, he forgot the power of the power tool and how much danger it can have, that he has to refocus and remember to respect it and understand it.
Yeah,
right.
I can't help but think, taking that and back to what Scott said though, you know, if the models keep getting better, the data that you're training on them, like coding, we know what secure coding is, right? I don't, so that's why I code something that is insecure. But if I used a model that was well trained on secure coding, then I could do it, right? So like, eventually I see those things getting better, not worse. But I don't
Maybe,
know,
but
right?
it's
You know?
been, what, 5 years since the first model came out, and it still produces the most horrific security incidents there is. And we've had secure coding for a while because all the security companies have been able to analyze our static code to say this is insecure, but we're not writing secure code.
There are a couple. This is a good question, by the way, because in governance, means go ahead, go.
Have any of you guys used agentic AI tools like Devon AI to create code, especially API code? And what impact do you think tools like Devon AI and Claude AI will have on people in this room?
All right, thank you. I will tie it in, I'll try it too. Is it like the corporate, we provide software, I live in a corporate structure, so I'm one of the internal abusers of a corporate system. I think that it's like, don't click on the email, don't send the proprietary data into the model, and there are ways to limit that stuff. The governance that I like to think about is on code standards, and specifically like in Claude Code is the best mental model for developers right now because it's command line, right? It's easy. There'll probably be plenty of Claude Code through other providers, but they're ahead a little bit. Having sub-agents, right, that have a clear context, so they're not sharing the same context as the main Claude Code that gets, like Robert said, it gets big and it keeps trying to remember this whole conversation, and it's the tasker, it's the coder. that you can have a sub agent that is specific to a specific security thing. So if you have someone that's super into security in code, which they should be, or you ask GPT Pro to write it for you, write the instructions in Markdown or JSON to implement this security thing. Put it into a sub agent in Cloud Code, and then have it kick off before a git commit or something, create a slash command. And so the fact that we can then share that instruction file for that sub agent in Git with all the other developers or whoever knows how to write that, that's really nice.
So,
And, we're trying to get other non-software development groups across our corporation to follow a similar pattern as like a software development lifecycle for them to use it, which is like, you know, hey, let's get some requirements. What are you trying to do? User-centric. So we're not necessarily building tools. It could just be helping them think through using our private GPT at the corporate level. But it does, like, if you're good at the SDLC process, it probably, we talked about it today, maybe we can take that flow diagram for them just to use one of the existing tools.
I would say the agentic side, the closest to agentic I personally use is ChatGPT's Codex system, which you know immediately go in, you tie it to a repo, it'll create a PR or branch for their code there. The moment you touch that branch, it no longer works because it says, hey, you've touched it, I don't have the context, I'm gonna go ahead and stop working on that branch. Now the benefit is because the way that Codex works is I'll tell it command, it'll run asynchronous onto its own branch. So I can have 3-4 branches going at one time. And I focus them on individual things. The other benefit is as it pulls back into the UI perspective, because it's a branch, it's much like a PR. So I think our engineers are going to get better at reading code and doing PRs than we are typing out some of the stuff that is, honestly, at this point, we should have a way to generate it. I mean, APIs are pretty basic for 80% of them. The business logic really is where you want to fine tune and understand. When I'm talking about coding a service. Now, when you talk about the ecosystem of an API and what you're trying to solve, that's where you need more mental models and more people focused on that and security. So using agentic to spit out the latest RESTful based on your open API specification, I say, why not at least have it generate the first pass and then correct the hell out of it? I mean, it saves you a lot of typing. Should it replace anyone? No. Because again, every line of code you should be held accountable for. Meaning that if you have one person generating 20,000 lines of code a week, that's 20,000 lines of code that they probably didn't read and they're just blindly accepting. But if you have a senior engineer who constantly gets pulled off for side meetings and other topics to help other teams, they can still get coding done on current projects while still spreading engineering knowledge to other teams and other groups. So again, it's a tool, use it where it sees fit. I think it can have a benefit, it should never replace us though.
There's another question. To answer your question, from my perspective, VS Code has the agent mode, which is nice because you can choose the different models, right? You can choose Gemini or GPT-4, ChatGPT-4. There's a little bit of, it's clunky the way that it uses terminal. When it's not like, it's not as fluid and as fast as Claude Code or one of the other CLI agentic tools, which is just leaps and bounds. So I would use the VS Code agent mode, but first say create, let's say for an API, right? Let's create the tasks. So I would have to tell it, create the tasks, put them into a markdown, put it in my docs folder, right? Now I go read it as a human and it's probably way off, right? Or you got to do it a couple times and then you say, okay, now implement it. And then you have to say, now stop, now go check it and write me another list of the things that you've done and why, and if you did it well, and then I'll stop, do a commit, right? So in that loop, I was doing that, and I was watching some of our developers do it, and we thought we were clever, and then we realized that that's exactly what Anthropic had been building for a year plus, which is what Claude Code is just a more fluid version of writing a task list, checking it off, and it was more fluid.
Now, I will say, if you've been developing APIs for a long time, they're very boring to write at the end of the day, because you end up doing the same thing. If you understand API style guides and you follow an API style guide, you end up writing a lot of the same code that you've probably already generated your project from a template. I mean, do it by hand once and then reuse it. That's what all engineers are kind of trained to do, is find the way to automate this and make it easier. If you're able to curate an LLM to get to the same end goal while it's doing background tasks, you may learn new tactics or learn new versions and keep things more updated. But again, review everything. Don't trust it. Like, don't blindly trust it. Review everything it outputs.
Question?
Since you're speaking of governance and agentic AI, right? In your experience, what's the blind spot that, in terms of governance, that organizations identify just only after deploying your agentic AI applications to production? Just curious to.
Well, it's man. I like to give the agent or the code or the instance of that like a name, like a human name, because you have to recognize that they are fallible. And so, like, just like accepting a PR or accepting, you're just assuming that it didn't write placeholders.
Right.
Is like, you can't do that. So we're thinking of sub agents that have clear context, that aren't biased, that are part of the loop, and we've got good engineers that are like very thorough, and you're like, well, it's your job to make sure that that works, because some of us, I'm guilty, because I've gotten back into the coding game now, is 20, 30, 40% of the solution I prototype will be placeholder crap. So we got to put a lot of guardrails in place for that. It's dangerous and waste of time in the near term. Over time,
I would say we have not been that concerned with it in our gas lab, because we actually have really good governance around our releases, and we're pretty confident that at least 2 sets of eyes, if not 3, have looked at any code that was generated. We're using GitHub Copilot right now, so but we had that in place before we even started doing Gen AI stuff.
And I would say it's still the same age-old question since microservice became the hot new topic. API security is still weak. I mean, we had a speaker, a year ago, we had No Name in, where they said that on average, enterprises have about 70,000 APIs that are insecure. It's shadow IT, it's shadow APIs. Same thing with your MCP servers, your LLMs, your agentic stuff. If you're not securing it and putting that security hat on first, and again, analyzing everything that you're building up to, it's just going to be the same amount of holes as if a developer built it and pushed it to prod without governance.
Right. I'm going to go back to an earlier answer I gave, which is put the clamps down firmly. Don't let anybody do anything unless it's approved, and then figure out how to get it approved expeditiously so you don't keep people waiting endlessly.
I probably agree with that. But I probably am born to disagree with that. I think one of the guardrails or one of the governance things is use it. If you don't use it, there's a bigger risk. And this is not my personal. I think we are all as a society, as a group of people, globally we are going probably too fast in all of it. But if you aren't trying to innovate with it, then the tail's wagging the dog. And so if you can innovate new products, or if you can innovate new services with it, then you need to have guardrails for the people that aren't innovating new products and new services, and be like, well, now you're in charge of the help desk or this, because somebody that is going to innovate should be in the job to do it.
I actually have a different take on that. I think with the research studies that are coming out of MIT and a few other places, we're actually getting dumber by using AI. There's studies that productivity for developers is going down. We're not producing as much code. We're having the security problems. But people using it for daily questions, they're actually testing at a like 30% deficiency over 3 months. So in some ways, yes, it can help out people that are looking for a quicker answer because they know the subject matter. The people who don't know the subject matter, the people who are massively trying to innovate outside of their realm of understanding, is actually causing more and more people to rely on it too heavily as a crutch, and we're getting dumber on basic stuff.
That is a statistical truism and a salient truth about GPS, about anything. But if you go all the way back to where the royal, powerful families had the library, and the only, like, the cost of knowledge was really, really high. And so then giving out books is like, oh, now people are just coming up with their own ideas, you know, or like they're not learning it themselves or just looking it up in a book.
Well,
You know,
actually,
like
they call
the
that
marginal
automation,
cost of knowledge is going down, which is incredible.
Yeah, but
Like-
now it's going at an exponential rate. I mean,
So let's go back to, so they're giving you an answer in the context of generative AI and AI in the coding arena. Was that the context of the question, or were you think, because companies are using generative AI for marketing,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a bunch of other stuff. That's where my mind went when you said, you know, what kind of things are companies doing from a governance perspective on that?
And I mean, you know, the way that I'm seeing people use it for the other content is they're still held accountable for it. I mean, it really comes back massively to accountability. Right now, though, it seems the hype train on LinkedIn and Truth and everyone else is, oh, I no longer need to pay for a developer. I can just freehand this or vibe code it, but they're not taking the accountability. However, you have a marketing director push out an ad that becomes racist because it said the wrong word in AI, they're fired and blacklisted across the companies, right? So it's accountability. It goes back to how you use it, everything that it outputs, you are accountable for. If you go with that mindset, it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
I found out that if you're in a Tesla and you have full self-driving and it's speeding and you get pulled over, you get the ticket, the Tesla does not. I'm kidding. It's true, but I did not get a ticket.
I've got one, specifically, and we're talking about governance, we're talking about those things, and you're talking about the level of expertise that it takes to recognize where it's lying to you or where it's wrong.
Yep.
We've got junior developers, we've got junior programmers, we've got junior project managers, we've got people who are generally the ones that we would pass some of this off to.
So you said a key word there every time, junior.
Yeah.
They're like apprentices in trades that should be trained.
I get it. What happens when we stop using junior developers and get them trained up on that?
As the GitHub CEO said, that's the dumbest thing anybody can do right now is quit hiring juniors.
Agreed.
Because they need to learn these tools, they need to learn the foundations, they need to learn the pain points, that they understand how to leverage the tool to still produce at the level that they need to produce at.
And I'm not just trying to argue with Robert, but to play devil's advocate, maybe it's our responsibility to fix our own crap and let them innovate something that's better, right? Think outside the box, you know?
I'll take that take. The
Yeah.
thing that I'm seeing though is that where
not
people
hiring
learn stuff, because I saw this with ThoughtSpot 5 years ago, where the junior analysts stopped being in there learning what it meant to find good data, and they were just using a tool that said, here's the result.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like we if you don't want to do the work really well, like AI, the person to the power of AI, I forget, I'm stealing that quote. Somebody said that. You find people that are good at their job, they love it, they want to do it, and then you give them a tool like this, and they will go find bugs for their junior developer and help them out and let them work on something more interesting.
I think the problem is, though, is like where we're highlighting is a lot of companies are stop hiring juniors, right? They expect seniors to do 10x with all this tool because that's what they're being fed in the hype train. A lot of companies are stopping hiring juniors. I mean, that's why the CEO of GitHub came out and said the statement he did is he's like, this is the dumbest thing I'm hearing. And he's pushing Copilot, right? Yeah. Now, the reality of it is it comes back to if we want to be good people and whatnot and tribal knowledge, which we've done for centuries. You know, yes, we've digitized it, but it's still tribal knowledge. I've never learned so much in a company than being on a 2 a.m. support call because the processing of checkout orders in the West Coast have been down because somebody put a select star in a master order system and crapped out the whole thing, right? You learn firefighting, and by firefighting as a junior, as even a senior, you learn new ways to prevent the burns. You're not going to get that unless you're thrusted into that environment.
It is an interesting question about the learning. It's definitely changing the way you learn, just like the phones have changed the way our kids socialize. It's bad, it's good, it's a bunch of stuff. I don't know. I think hindsight 2020 will look at it, 20 years from now and then judge it differently potentially. But people did not forget how to do math when we went from abacuses to calculators, so like
I would challenge that because
you're just gonna learn in a different
don't
way,
know how to do change.
so I tend to believe that philosophically. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a tool. And when I coded, it was long enough ago. You used VI or Emacs, and you argued about which was better. You didn't have IDEs. You didn't have like all these things that improved developer productivity, made things easier, faster. And I kind of see it, in the same vein. But it is also very dangerous.
Doing is different. I think that the nature of that troubleshooting at 2 a.m. They're not gonna be looking for that select star or finding it. They're gonna need to know how to get AI to go find it for the event, right?
They're gonna find it in the code before they ever release a prod.
Nah,
if they
doubt it.
You were talking about.
Wait, my bigger point is I used to worry about the junior devs. I'm not seeing numbers like you're talking. I know the headlines are there. I do
Right.
know that. I used to be concerned about the junior devs because I'm like, but then we had a slew of interns working with us over the summer. And I hate the term, but they are AI native. These guys were using those tools and they were using them hard and good and well, right? They didn't have experience because they hadn't been programming for any length of time whatsoever, but they knew how to use those tools. So then I started to rethink it a little bit, and I was like, maybe the people I should be worried about are the mid-career people who aren't picking up on this tooling in college or at a boot camp, and they don't quite yet have that forest level vision that we need and we think that most developers are going to need as we go down this path. So that's who I'm worried about right now, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Are you guys still having human code reviews? I mean, back in the old days when I actually.
Are we still doing human code reviews? That was the question.
Let me see. This week alone, what are we at now, Phil? 20,000 lines that I've had to review.
Oh yeah.
And I review every single line.
What, are you having the conversations with the people who did this?
What we're doing the comments, and we will have conversations in this very building actually. So I take the stance of, even if we use an AI tool to generate it, one, I'd be annoyed if that 20,000 of human written lines went to 70,000 of AI generated lines. I would want to kill somebody. But the fact is I analyze every single line. I put comments where I have questions. I put comments where I forgot things that we've already talked about. And I even put long comments around, hey, here's 2 other options. We really need to discuss this in person. We'll meet on this day. So yeah, I think you have to do it again, but I also have the core belief that every line of code is accountability. So even if I generate it, I'm still gonna be the one that should be held over the fire and terminated if it's a breach.
And it's also such a great learning opportunity. That's to where I saw we were educating.
I would argue that those code review moments have to become where we start to give those juniors the perspective they need, the critical thinking they need to get out of their juniorness.
Now the downfall is those when they generate 30,000 lines of code to solve a div center that is insane.
So that's part of it. You see that and you're like, no, go rework this. Too long. Right? And that's the sweet. You guys have seen the research on PRs. I forget his name, Draganovich. But basically, he was saying there's a sweet spot where if a PR is too small, it's not worth it. You're interrupting people's days and being inefficient that way. And if it's too large, you lose the person who's reviewing it in the first 45 seconds, right? So I think there's going to be some work that we've got to do to figure out what the optimal size of a PR is to make this work with AI.
Yeah, I would say we're trying to find that balance. It's nice if you have a small team that works really well together and figure that out. But the comments are very frequent right now. Like that's way too big to be a PR, but nice.
What was that?
That means it's 7:30, so let's try to finish your thoughts, Scott. We'll take one last question if there's one, and then we'll wrap it up.
You know, like we probably used to write more C++, and then write all, like the abstraction layers go. It's like there's a trend where the code reviews and the teamwork on Friday to look at what you do will probably end up becoming, you're going to be reading more readable English stuff because the instructions are like MCP, right, which is something that we didn't talk too much about, but like we've seen really cool stuff where you're now reviewing the MCP instructions, right, as much as you are. So
we're not writing in ones and zeros anymore, or assembly, or even,
Yeah.
like
But-
it's all.
But we have, I mean, this past week, there was a couple conversations that were like, okay, well, let's also just admit that if you're starting a new code base, the first few BRs are like,
Oh yeah.
bigger. And
Creating
so
a
like
new
if it's
resource,
mature,
yeah.
so there's definitely a balance, and what's interdependent and in conflict at the same time is that like, yeah, you want to learn and like, yeah, review that because the implementation of that switch statement or that recursive function is diabolic and terrible and stupid. But then like,
But tell
that
them.
means that you know how to do it better, or you could ask something that has a lot of knowledge and ask the coding agents to find a better way. And generally speaking, if you have somebody that knows algorithms with well-prompted code review, you're using AI to help that smart senior engineer with the code review is like, it'll refactor it, and then you congratulate the junior developer for knowing where to put the idea.
That is a direction I'm picking up more and more daily, is AI involved in the code review, right? Which surprised me at how fast, because like literally 2 weeks ago, it was like, no, we always need a human in the loop. Now I'm like, maybe not so much.
I'm a human in the loop.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So my last thing is love vibe coding to then get the specs to do spec-based human in the loop.
Oh, vibe
Slow and
coding
safe.
to iterate on a prototype, by all
Yeah.
means. I mean, but I always caveat this. POC does not mean proof of concept. It is production, of course. So meaning every POC I've ever worked on ended up in production before we got cleanup. So don't use vibe coding to create a POC. Only do a technical feasibility review first. That way no marketing or brand person says, oh, it's a POC, let's launch it. Use it to get core concepts down or core problems down, and then go build it with tighter instructions, tighter loops, tighter scenarios. I mean, let's face it, if I have a large object or a large payload coming in, I'm gonna tell it, write me a struct in Go that parses this out, just so I can copy, paste, and correct it, because I don't want to type that much.
I see a lot of room for product managers in that space to do the prototyping and like building out an idea, but just go into it knowing that what I'm doing, that code, never see the light of day. I'm proving out the concept, then the engineers will take over and productionize it.
And as a product person who's more technical than most, completely agree. You cannot ship that.
But they
You're
do.
responsible for it. Well, then not
And
my
it's
product
fun.
people.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, well, let's give a round of applause for our speakers.